Hey everyone, today I want to talk to you about body fat. And I mean the stuff you probably haven't heard before, maybe never even considered. This is incredibly useful information for understanding excess weight with a clear head, where it comes from, how to deal with it, and when you shouldn't even try to fight it. This information is powerful and will radically differ from what you're used to hearing, so buckle up. I constantly see people on social media, especially beginner fitness trainers, criticizing someone's body, telling them to lose weight. First of all, remember this. A person doesn't always look that way because something is wrong with them. And the idea that it's some kind of disease, I see it in interviews all the time. This notion that weight loss is always simple. Work out more, eat less. I once had a conversation with a registered dietitian, and when he answered this question in a way that wasn't black and white, people started attacking him online. That's when I realized there's a massive gap in public knowledge, and I feel obligated to fill it. First, let's understand what fat actually is. In most people's minds, fat is just a cell where triglycerides are stored, like gas in a tank. But if you look at the anatomy, the cell structure is incredibly complex. When we talk about a fat unit, we're talking about arterial vessels, venous vessels, lymphatic vessels. All of this wraps around adipose tissue and forms a highly sophisticated mechanism. Let me hit you with something right off the bat. A fat cell under external influence can release up to 50 signaling molecules. 50 signaling molecules. If I asked any of you watching right now to name even 5, nobody could do it. And that's partly the problem. Some of these molecules regulate anti-tumor immunity, others control appetite, others actively manage glucose levels, and still others handle cellular immune response. There's a massive number of signaling molecules through which fat powerfully affects your entire body. So fat isn't just a storage depot for nutrients. That's not how it works. This understanding, how important this really is, needs to be in your head. Got it? Good. Second point, it's crucial to understand what types of fat exist, because when you're dealing with obesity or noticing fat on yourself, you need to understand where it comes from, where it ends up, and why that's bad or good. There are 3 classifications of fat. First is subcutaneous fat, the stuff under your skin. You know what that is. Those are the folds on your belly. Second is visceral fat. This is that hormonal obesity pattern you often see. A guy walks in and his gut is pushing out from the inside. You pinch the surface and there's nothing there, but internally it's growing. When I operate on patients like this, I struggle during surgery because there's no room to work, everything's uncomfortable, space is limited, and everything is covered in fat. The intestines have fat deposits on them. The omentum is enlarged. That's the apron-like structure that covers your intestines and hangs from the stomach. And the kidneys, which I operate on frequently, sit in a fat cocoon. All these types of fat are different. So we have visceral fat, subcutaneous fat, and then there's a third type that we most commonly see in sick people, ectopic fat. Take a large, obese person, do an ultrasound, and you'll likely see fat in their liver, or you'll see muscle fiber degeneration with fatty inclusions appearing. This is a sign of a metabolically unhealthy person. It's called ectopic fat, subcutaneous, visceral, ectopic. Now let's talk about the actual structure of fat. All fat in the body is divided into 3 types based on whether it releases certain hormones, leptin and thermogenin. Leptin essentially controls your appetite. When leptin rises, appetite decreases. When leptin drops, appetite increases. Thermogenin, from the word thermo, meaning temperature. Fat that doesn't contain thermogenin doesn't warm you. That's your subcutaneous fat. All this fat that people say is ugly, that's called white fat. There's no thermogenin in white fat, so it doesn't generate heat, but it does contain leptin. Got that? Now, which fat does warm us? That's brown fat. Brown fat is associated with babies. That's why children, who have a bit more of it, handle cold temperatures better and survive longer in extreme conditions. White fat differs from brown fat in that brown fat contains thermogenin. It can generate temperature. It keeps you warm. Where is this fat located? Your armpits, around major blood vessels between your shoulder blades. That's why these areas rarely get cold. Think about it. When was the last time your armpits were ice cold? It almost never happens. Beyond these two types, we can also classify fat by mitochondria count. Remember, mitochondria are the energy factories in every cell of your body. In white fat, the cell is mostly fat with very few mitochondria. But in brown fat, partly because it can actively help maintain temperature, there are many mitochondria and less stored fat. And here's the good news. You can grow the right kind of fat. There's actually a healthy fat for those who've gotten on the right track. It's called beige fat. No joke, beige fat is real. What is it? It's fat that was once white but has become more like brown because the person exercises. It's fat that changed its structure, more mitochondria developed, less fat remained because the person actively works out and lives a healthy lifestyle. But here's the thing, it's not always true that someone who exercises looks fit. A perfect example I always give is professional fighters. You've seen it, right? Someone goes 12 rounds in a professional boxing match while being overweight. They're incredibly enduring, they're strong, but they're still heavy. Their intense physical training doesn't make them lean. All those training camps don't make them thin. So when someone loses weight, doesn't lose weight, or gains weight, you need to understand that hormones, neurology, environment, there are so many factors involved. It's not just simple math. So if anyone tells you it's all because you're overeating, tell them to take a hike. That person is simply uneducated. And if your trainer says that, change trainers. Here's an important point that many trainers don't mention or don't know. First myth, that the body has a fixed number of fat cells that never changes. That's false. Fat cell count does increase. The number of adipocytes, fat cells, that you have can increase 2 to 3 times. But some people reach enormous sizes. How? Because fat accumulation doesn't happen only through hypertrophy, the enlargement of existing fat cells, but also through the creation of new ones. There are cells called pre-adipocytes. These are cells surrounding adipocytes that, under external factors like poor hormonal balance, overeating, or low activity, get stimulated and proliferate into full-fledged adipocytes. So the number of adipocytes grows because these precursor cells, under the influence of your unhealthy lifestyle, develop into adipocytes that start storing fat like any other fat cell. Adipocytes renew very slowly, only about 10% per year, and they live a long time, roughly a decade. So those chunks of fat hanging around your lower back, you probably put them there maybe 10 years ago. You're literally carrying around a burger you ate on some weekend a decade ago, and it'll only renew after another 10 years. That's the reality. There's a fascinating characteristic of adipocytes. When they become too large, nutrition gets disrupted because the cell expanded due to its fat content, but its blood supply worsened. The bigger the area that needs nourishing, the harder everything works. So the cell starts releasing pro-inflammatory factors into the bloodstream. That's why people with a lot of fat have more inflammation in their bodies. Their joints hurt more often. Atherosclerosis develops more frequently, and many hormones, including sex hormones, don't work as well because of this inflammatory environment forming in the body. So yes, a leaner person may genuinely be a healthier person. But here's the most important thing. Some people by nature will never be thin, like those professional athletes I mentioned, because there's such a thing as your comfortable genetic weight. There's extensive research on this. If you follow metabolism studies and keep up with fresh publications, it's been proven that a comfortable weight exists, and for some people that's 220 pounds. All those height-weight formulas, they're not very accurate. Some people are simply built to weigh 240 pounds. Any effort to get leaner, like me, for example, I weigh around 240, and any effort to drop to 220, my body will resist. Why? Because that's not a comfortable weight for it. When weight drops, the body will strengthen appetite through hormonal manipulation and slow down metabolism. And conversely, when I gain toward 260 or 280 pounds, my appetite weakens and energy expenditure increases. The body works hard to return you to your comfortable weight. Your comfortable weight is usually the weight you were around your early to mid-20s. It's the weight you can maintain through a healthy lifestyle. Everything that accumulated after that, it formed under specific influences, primarily your genetics. That's why an overweight father is more likely to have an overweight son. Genetics matter enormously. Fat will deposit in the same places it deposits on your dad. Notice how your belly looks like your dad's belly, or your sister's thighs store fat in the same spot as your mom's. Second factor, what happens in utero when your mother is carrying you? If during pregnancy your mother experiences significant stress, like many women who work right up until the 7th or 8th month dealing with bosses and workplace pressure, all of this negatively affects the baby and increases the chances of weight problems later. Why? Because stress hormones from the adrenal glands that enter the bloodstream affect the baby and increase the risk of weight issues. Another factor is childhood nutrition, how balanced and proper it is during the first years of life. Trying to restore a healthy physique and turn a child into an athlete who won't be prone to weight gain by teaching them proper nutrition at 15 won't work. Most likely, they'll be much more prone to weight gain because crucial time was lost. The non-missed window statistically, when all this gets established, is the first 3 to 5 years of life. You'll realize this potential later. But the predispositions form early, and they'll manifest during puberty and young adulthood. So it's critically important to understand that the person sitting in front of you might not be lazy just because they're heavy. Unfortunately, that's just how they are by nature. The main thing is being healthy, not satisfying society's demands, because today, beauty means thin. Generations ago, beauty meant fuller figures. Everyone has their own concept of a healthy, comfortable weight, and you shouldn't impose your principles on anyone or judge them for being different from you. That's nonsense. It's unproductive. It's rude. About bioelectrical impedance analysis, it can be quite misleading. If you're bloated or have more water in your system, the test results can significantly distort the readings. You need to know how to interpret them. True professional impedance measurement is done with water immersion. There's professional equipment that's genuinely accurate. But those machines at gyms, you need to know how to read them because they always have considerable margins of error. The best approach is measuring yourself. If you're lifting weights, measure your arm or your thigh. Take progress photos. That works. People often come to me saying they want to lose 10 pounds. I ask them, do you want to lose 10 pounds or do you have an image in your head of how you want to look? And you associate that with needing to lose 10 pounds. Because I look at them and realize they don't need to lose 10 pounds. They need to gain 10 pounds, and then they'll look exactly how they want. If they lose 10 pounds, probably from muscle since they're already quite lean, they'll look even worse. They'll lose the weight and still feel like they need to lose more. They'll still be unhappy with their physique. You've seen those photos where a woman actually gained weight but looks better, or lost weight and looks worse. Lost weight incorrectly, went below her comfortable weight. The most important thing is determining whether someone truly has obesity, and if so, what type. There's primary obesity and secondary obesity. There are genuine cases where someone overeats and there's no underlying disease, but there are also cases where someone isn't overeating. There's an endocrine issue at play. It's really problematic when someone has an endocrine condition and you just push them to hit the gym harder without checking their health. It'll be counterproductive and potentially harmful. It's better than doing nothing, but if someone has a significant excess of body mass, more than 10% above their healthy weight, and they continue gaining easily, there's likely some endocrine dysfunction. A professional should review their blood work, or their trainer if they understand this stuff. Why does obesity even exist if nature is so smart and tries to optimize everything? Look, obesity actually isn't inherently bad. It used to be a survival mechanism. If someone was prone to storing fat, it meant they were in conditions where that was necessary for survival. But now it's no longer a survival factor. Statistically, the number of obese people in the world has now exceeded the number of people who regularly go hungry. The obesity problem could actually solve world hunger if those who overeat shared. Food is now abundant, physical activity is minimal, and there's no practical benefit to overeating anymore. So unfortunately, let's face the truth, excess weight today has far more downsides than upsides. I'll be honest, I'm against the distorted version of body positivity that's being pushed everywhere, telling everyone to love yourself no matter what. Sure, you can love yourself as a person regardless of your size, but if you have excess body fat that's increasing your risk of numerous diseases, blaming your genetics endlessly isn't the answer. A strong person takes control of the situation and improves their health through diet, exercise, and developing proper habits. So body positivity for someone missing a limb, absolutely. For someone with a birthmark on their face, yes. But when someone has morbid obesity and says, love and respect me exactly as I am, what does that look like? No, that's about disrespecting yourself. That distorted body positivity is about neglecting yourself. That's all for today. Have a great day, everyone.